call in. Y'all, 2 months ago, we had flags at half-staff for a right-wing podcaster whose wife allegedly did not end up getting pregnant a few weeks later by presumably the vice president of the United States, and people lost their jobs for not being sufficiently sad about it. But we have one dead Army National Guard member and one severely wounded Air National Guard member. I don't see any flags at half-mast except in West Virginia. And if you're a veteran and that doesn't tell you where you rank on things, the whole crowd of thank you for your service and support the troops no matter what doesn't give a fuck about you, and the administration that you support, if you're a conservative vet flake vet bro, why are you still supporting this fucking regime? They're saying that our crowd isn't nearly as much of a hero as Charlie Kirk. That guy couldn't even finish fucking college. And he got rejected from the military. So, you're still supporting the Trump administration and you fucking have a DD-214 or whatever reserve guard people have, your little formal letter of release. Fucking why? This is the longest cold open ever, so I guess. What's up, fam of Liberty? And also, everyone else who's watching this video but isn't yet following our channel for some reason. Or maybe you do have a reason, like I'm just too foul-mouthed and crude and obnoxious for you. Who the fuck knows? Anyway, it's your boy Big Sarge, founder of the Sons of Liberty, social media organization that's been steadily enraging MAGA fuckface ass clowns since 2015. If you saw us out in the streets at a protest for the first time or you're new to our channel, I know what you might be thinking, so let me go ahead and get it out of the way for you. Fuck Donald Trump. Fuck MAGA traitors. Fuck GOP politicians. Fuck all these limp dick establishment Democrat politicians that aren't out there in the streets fighting for us every day. Fuck Democrats that don't support impeachment. And fuck billionaires. Leeches that I like to call wealth hoarders that have their fucking boots on the neck of just about every American citizen. Neither this channel nor its comment sections on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere else are a safe space for you bootlicking simps for wannabe king, a Russian asset, a 34-time convicted felon, adjudicated rapist, diddler of young girls, Wish.com fascist oligarch, failed insurrectionist, failed businessman, guy who has multiple bankruptcies and failed business ventures, a wannabe authoritarian tyrant, a self-confessed lover of very young girls, a guy who lusts after his own daughter, an admitted sexual predator, and a guy who was friends for over a decade with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. It's all the same person, Donald Trump. Now you know where I stand on things, so if you're still here and you're not frantically rage typing into the comments box like a triggered MAGA snowflake who's ass mad about fucking, well, everything, I guess, since you're all a bunch of perpetually outraged and aggrieved meat puppets, then maybe you should consider following this channel after you watch this video and deciding whether or not you like the cut of my jib. On today's topic and the cut of my jib, there are exactly 3 types of ways you're going to feel about today's video rant. You either don't care because you're a Trump cultist, you're outraged about it because you're someone who has a shred of human dignity and common sense, or you, again, MAGA supporter, actively roll your eyes at the outraged people because you tacitly or overtly endorse war crimes. Period. Point blank. Yesterday, news broke that the first quote-unquote boat strike resulted in 2 survivors who were then killed as they clung to the side of their stricken boat. Now, an awful lot of people on the internet are feeling some type of way, depending on a couple of things like their political confirmation bias, what their cousin Jimmy, who served in the Air Force, has to say about it, and their feelings on the administration versus how that weighs with their feelings on whether it's okay to ignore the law or follow it, because it's all selective and performative. Now, as usual, in situations like this and others, suddenly a lot of people on the internet magically became overnight experts on combat, target identification, the Geneva Convention, rules of engagement, and a thing called hors de combat, which is a French term meaning out of combat. Hors de combat is a term that's used in international humanitarian law to describe a person who's no longer a threat and can't fight due to being wounded or sick or captured or incapacitated or just out of action. And out of action is a very specific but broad sweeping phrase that doesn't necessarily mean they've necessarily surrendered. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Individuals who are declared hors de combat are protected from attack and they must be treated humanely. This status applies as long as the person abstains from any hostile act and does not attempt to escape. Under international humanitarian law, aka the Geneva Convention. It is a war crime to intentionally attack a person who is recognized as hors de combat. Want to know how I know the United States historically follows this policy? Because we prosecuted Japanese and German submarine commanders, and we prosecuted Waffen SS commanders for things like machine gunning prisoners of war or survivors of a combat sinking of a vessel. You've probably heard of the Nuremberg trials, and you may not be as familiar with their eastern counterpart, the Tokyo trials. Things like the Bataan Death March, the Malmedy and Bühlingen massacres, machine gunning sailors whose vessels were sunk, shooting parachuting aircrew who escaped their stricken aircraft, etc., etc. And the U.S. has its fair share of war crimes in World War II, some of which were covered up and others which were prosecuted. And then there was also the infamous, notorious My Lai massacre in Vietnam. Anyway, we're not even at war in the Caribbean, at least not as of this moment. But I hear we're preparing for a ground invasion of Venezuela, which, as you may or may not know, has a lot of oil. And of course, even though we're not at war, we have a quote-unquote Secretary of War. But honestly, Secretary of War sounds like something that came out of a children's comic book. Well, this is real life, motherfucker, and I dead name, unironically and intentionally, conservatives who fuck with my trans friends. So just like I do with James Donald Bowman, aka that couch fucker, Vladimir Futon, I'm doing the same thing with Secretary of Defense Pete Whiskey Leaks Cock Breath or Keg Breath or the Hegseth. Get it? The Hague? Pete Hegseth is declining to comment, probably on the advice of his attorneys, on a report that he ordered the military to kill all passengers aboard a boat that was suspected of ferrying drugs in the Caribbean Sea in September. The U.S. military strike, which took place September 2nd on an alleged drug boat, initially left 2 survivors clinging to the boat. U.S. Navy Admiral Mitch Bradley, head of Special Operations Command, then ordered a second strike in order to comply with Keg Breath's orders and to ensure the survivors couldn't call on other traffickers to retrieve them and their cargo. That phrasing, I don't know why he said it that way, but he did. To call on other So their boat has been blown up. They're clinging to the side of it in the ocean. This boat is done. Dead. Fucking wrecked. They're not going anywhere. They're not calling anybody. But this guy's like, yeah, well, he said kill them all. And, well, we can't let them get their buddies to retrieve them and their cargo that's floating out there in the water. And, because we certainly can't bring that aboard. Now, can we? Never mind the fact that I had to serve as a Spanish translator and was attached to the Coast Guard in 1998. And I saw the fucking Coast Guard picking shit up out of the water. I know because we burned it. And if you've never been in any type of law enforcement or counter-narcotic stuff, I just need you to picture a bunch of dudes throwing marijuana on a fire. Anyway, if it's true, it's unclear why Admiral Bradley wouldn't have ordered troops to collect the survivors and their cargo from the water, because the military did exactly that in a subsequent strike when 2 survivors were taken aboard a Navy ship via helicopter. I'd still like to know why those other 2 survivors were repatriated to their country and not either murdered or brought up on charges in the United States. I mean, we all know the answer is that they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute, so that makes the strike, the first strike, a war crime. This is why it's important that troops have the right to defy illegal orders, as per Article 92 of the UCMJ, which I've covered in another video when I was talking shit to Dakota Myers. This also explains why Hegseth went nuts over Senator Mark Kelly in the video to troops about their potentially unlawful conduct. Hegseth invoking his Fifth Amendment right along with a fifth of whiskey is pretty telling, don't you think? And yet, we have slack-jawed jabronis like Dakota Meyer asking, unironically and comically, well, what illegal orders have been given? Well, hero, I know you're a crayon-eating Marine and a conservative shill who's dumb enough to knock up one of the Palin clan. So at this point, apparently, I gotta explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. And it's ironic that a guy whose Medal of Honor stemmed from disobeying orders is trying to position himself as the conservative, veteran voice of reason here to vet-splain illegal orders to the rest of us. Anyway, it looks like Pete Smegma Breath's days are now numbered because now the Republican and Democrat heads of the Senate Armed Forces Committee are going to investigate. Finally. And because this administration has zero respect for, well, anything American, like the justice system, the system of checks and balances, the rule of law, the Constitution, international law, the Geneva Convention, and zero respect for the separation of powers, so I foresee Pete Hegseth, if he shows up, showing up to the hearing, smelling of booze, and trying to be Jack Nicholson from A Few Good Men, screaming about, you need me on that wall, you want me on that wall, and you can't handle the truth. Now, what's really weird, and by weird I mean hypocritical, is the administration shooting at alleged drug traffickers, which it admits it can't even prove, but Trump just pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was extradited to the United States, where he was tried and sentenced to a 45-year prison stint for conspiring to distribute more than 400 tons of cocaine. But I bet the bootlicking Simpson MAGA don't give a fuck about that. That is my time for today. Before I go, yesterday I did some extensive work in the Sons of Liberty merch store. I put up some beanies, flat bill caps, trucker hats, revamped a lot of the long sleeve shirts so that they now go up to 5X if you're one of those big and tall customers. I forgot to mention that from now until Tuesday, December 2nd, on the Sons of Liberty Etsy store, you can use the code LIBERTY10, that's Liberty10, for orders over $20 and get 10% off. I'm also pleased to inform you that Big Sarge's Superwoke coffee is now live and available for your eventual consumption. I had to stick up a second web store since Etsy has rules about selling perishable goods. There's a decaf blend, and then there's a light, medium, and dark blend. Each has their own unique name. There's knife hand, there's throat punch, there's leftier than now, and there's so woke nap blend. That's the decaf because, anyway. I'm also taking orders via Discord instructions only for Sons of Liberty vinyl patches. Happy holidays in advance. Big Sarge out here. 2 claps and a Rick. Woo!
And now it's time for the throw punch!